The knife was real. That was the part Vashkari could never explain later. For 9 years, Warden Cinder had followed the protocols. Restraints, measured pain, sleep taken away in careful portions, like water rationed to a dying animal. 9 years of a human woman strapped to a cradle of black alloy in a room that smelled of cold metal and old blood. And then, on the 3,286th day, the warden walked in, cut her right hand free, and put a blade in it. He stepped back exactly 1 pace. Close enough. He wanted it to be close enough. "Take it," he said. Elune stood against the wall with her recorder humming, and every filament along her spine went rigid. She was an archivist. She was not supposed to be in the room when something happened. She was supposed to be in the room when nothing did. The human's fingers closed around the handle. Sergeant Wren Holloway was 38 years old and looked 60. Her hair had gone gray in uneven patches where the neural taps had burned the follicles. Her left shoulder sat wrong in its socket and had for 6 years. She weighed less than a core-high adolescent. She turned the knife over once, the way a person checks whether a tool is sharp. Then she reversed it, laid the handle across her open palm, and held it out to him. "You dropped this," she said. Bohr did not move. His crest, the wide bone fan that framed the Core-High officer's skull, flushed the deep amber of a creature that has just been insulted in a language it does not speak. "You have 1 opening," he said. "1. You will not get another. Take it." "No, thank you." "Why?" And when Holloway smiled with a mouth that had lost 4 teeth in this building and said, "Because you'd like it too much." Ellen's recorder logged the exchange. Timestamp, speaker identification, ambient temperature. She filed it the way she had filed 9 years of everything, and she did not understand then that she had just recorded the most dangerous sentence ever spoken inside the Ascendancy. The warden left, the door sealed, and the human sat there, hands still open, waiting for someone to take the blade away, because she would not put it down and she would not keep it. The tribunal was in 11 days. That was the pressure crushing the warden, and everyone in the facility could feel it. In 11 days, the Concord of 9 Suns would convene to ratify the Ascendancy's claim to the Soviet homeworld, a warm green pearl of a planet the Core-High had wanted for 2 centuries. The claim rested on a single legal finding, that the Soviet species was extinct. No survivors, no heirs, no claimants. An empty house, legally speaking, and the Ascendancy had simply walked in. The finding was 3/4 true. The Soviet had died in a resettlement that went wrong in all the ways such things go wrong, and Cinder War had signed the order that started it. He had not meant genocide. He had meant efficiency. He had meant a hard year followed by a better one, and he had been so certain of it that he had put his name on every page. That was the thing about him that Elune understood and could never quite hate. He had believed he was building something. But there was a hole in the finding, and the hole had a number. 60. 60 Soviet children had left the homeworld in the last convoy before the collapse. 60 children had crossed the Marin Corridor under Concord escort. And then the convoy had been ambushed and the escort had been captured. And the 60 had simply stopped existing anywhere in the Ascendancy's records. If even one of them was alive, the extinction finding was a lie, the claim was void, and the warden's name was on the page. Which is why, for 9 years, the Empire had asked one human woman the same question in 1,000 different ways. Where are the children? She had crossed the corridor on foot. That was the part the Ascendancy's own analysts kept returning to, the detail they read and reread like a mistranslation. The convoy had been disarmed at the Marin checkpoint, because that was the price of passage. No Concord escort could carry weapons through Ascendancy space. The humans had agreed. Of course they had agreed. Humanity's whole presence in the corridor was a courtesy. A small, tired species with 300 ships and no leverage, allowed to run relief convoys because they were cheap and polite and nobody important wanted the job. 6 human soldiers had walked onto that transport with 64 civet children and nothing sharper than a ration knife. The ambush killed the pilots in the first 8 seconds. Whoever did it never claimed it, and the Ascendancy investigated it the way you investigated a thing you would rather not find. The transport came down 200 kilometers from the relay station on the night side of a moon where the surface temperature fell to -60 before dawn. 5 human soldiers died in the crash or in the hours after it. Wren Holloway did not. She got the children out through a hull breach she widened with a strut in her own hands. She sorted them by size. She cut the transport's insulation blanket into 64 squares and wrapped each one, and when there was not enough, she took her own coat apart. She counted them out loud, over and over, because counting was the only thing she could give them that never ran out. Then she started walking. So that children are small and warm and slow, and they cry in a high fluting register that carries a long way in cold air. 4 of them died on that moon. Wren carried 3 of the 4 for hours after they had stopped moving, because she would not leave a body where the scavengers ran, and because she had promised their mother something in a language she barely spoke. She reached the relay station at dawn on the 3rd day, dragging a cargo tarp with 11 children on it, 60 behind her and walking. 60, not 64. She never once, in 9 years of interrogation, said 64. She always gave the true number and then the 4 names, in order, every single time, as though the arithmetic mattered more than her own skin. The Ascendancy's file described her as unbroken but non-hostile. The analyst who wrote that line was later reassigned, because it was the single most accurate thing in 9 years of documentation, and nobody at the time understood what it meant. What Elune understood was smaller and stranger. The human knew her name. Not her designation, her name. Elune, which no prisoner had ever bothered to learn, and no Corps High officer had used in front of a prisoner. Wren had asked for it in her 2nd year, politely, the way you ask a stranger on a transit platform. Elune had refused. Wren had asked again in her 3rd year. In her 4th year, Elune had told her, mostly to make her stop. After that, the human said it every day. Good morning, Elune. Cold in here today, Elune. How's your daughter, Elune? Elune had a daughter. Sesh was 11, and had a laugh like water going down a drain. And Elune had mentioned her exactly once, and the human had never forgotten. It was not friendship. Elune was very clear with herself about that. It was a tactic, a slow, patient erosion, and she filed each instance under behavioral anomaly and moved on. But there came a night in the 7th year when the human's heart failed twice on the table, and Elune found herself standing in the corridor afterward, with her hand shaking, and the thought in her head was not she nearly died. It was she asked about Sesh this morning. That was the night Elune asked her own question, off the record, through the door slot. Why don't you hate me? The human took a long time to answer. Her voice, when it came, was wrecked and calm. Hating you would take something I need for other things. That is not an answer. It's the only true one you'll get tonight. A pause. Elune, are you still writing everything down? Everything. It is my function. Good, Wren said. Don't stop. 11 days became 6. On the 6th day, Cinder War did something a warden of the Ascendancy is never supposed to do. He went into the archive himself. Elon found him there at 3rd watch, standing in the cold blue light of the household registry, scrolling through 9 years of naturalization records with his crest gone flat against his skull. He had a name on the display. A Corps High family from a farming province 8 jumps away, and a dependent child listed under the standard adoption clause, and the child's given name was Ashfell. Ashfell is not a Corps High name. It has a syllable in it that core-high throats produce badly. It is a Sevet name. It means, more or less, small light. How many? Boar said, not turning around. Ilun could not make her voice work. How many, archivist? She ran the query with fingers that would not stay steady. Cross-reference, adoption clause, non-standard phoneme, registration window of 9 years past. The system returned 60. 60 households. 60 provinces, none of them adjacent, spread across 11 ascendancy worlds, like seeds thrown by a hand that knew exactly how far it could throw. Farmers, foundry workers, a harbor pilot, a teacher, a retired quartermaster who had lost 3 sons in the border wars and had taken in a small four-eyed thing that sang in its sleep. The children had never been hidden. They had been given away. Wren Holloway had reached the relay station at dawn with 60 survivors and 31 hours before Ascendancy security arrived. She had used every one of those hours. She had put the children on outbound freight, one at a time, in the arms of ordinary core-high crews going home on leave, with a letter each, written in her terrible handwriting, saying only, "Her name is HFY. She is 4. She likes to be held facing outward so she can see." And then she had sat down in the empty station and waited to be arrested, because there was nowhere left to run, and running had never been the plan. For 9 years, the Ascendancy had torn a woman apart looking for a hiding place, and the children had been eating breakfast in core-high kitchens the entire time. Under the hearthrite, Ilun heard herself say, an accepted child is core-high. Full standing. It is one of the oldest laws we have. I know what it is. Vor's voice had gone very quiet. It cannot be revoked. Not by me. Not by the Concord. Then the Sevet are not extinct. No. Then the claim. I know what the claim is, archivist. He turned around, and Ilun saw something in his face she had never seen in 9 years. A man doing arithmetic he could not survive. 60 living heirs to a world we have already settled. 60 living witnesses to a resettlement I signed in 6 days. The order went out that night, under a code Ilun had only ever seen in training material. Not arrests, corrections. 60 quiet corrections in 11 provinces, executed simultaneously before the tribunal convened. Records amended, households visited. The kind of operation that leaves a region with a slightly smaller population and no explanation. Ilun sat in her quarters with the order on her screen for 2 hours and 11 minutes. She thought about Sesh, asleep in the next room. She thought about the quartermaster who had lost 3 sons. She thought about a human woman saying good morning, Ilun, in a voice like gravel, every day for 6 years, and about the fact that, in 9 years of transcripts, she had never once recorded that woman screaming a curse at anyone. Then she went back to the archive, and she read the transcripts. Not filed them, read them. And she finally saw it. 9 years in interrogation, thousands of hours. And in almost every session, the human had given them something. She had never been silent. Silence would have been treated as resistance, and resistance would have gotten her killed, and a dead prisoner cannot testify. So she talked. She gave them useless things. Weather on the moon, the color of the transport's interior, the order of the meals, and names, always names. The 4 children who died, every time, in order. The 5 soldiers who died, with their hometowns. The freight crews, described but never named, because she had made sure never to learn those. The core-high medic at the relay station who gave her a blanket. Ilun's own name, 340 separate times. And in the 4th year, buried in an 11-hour session about nothing, she had recited 60 names. Sevet names. Small Light, Riverstone, Second Thaw. She had said them as though delirious, and the interrogator on duty had marked the segment low value and moved on. and Alun Vashet had filed it, dutifully, into the imperial record, which under ascendancy law is permanent, unalterable, and open to any conquered tribunal that requests it. A human tortured for 9 years had not been resisting an interrogation. She had been filing a case. Every session was a deposition. Every day she stayed alive was another day the deposition stayed valid. Every act of restraint was a lawyer's discipline, because under the Concord's own statutes, the sworn record of a prisoner is admissible, and the sworn record of a prisoner who has killed her captor is not. That was why she handed back the knife. Elune sat very still in the blue light with her hands over her mouth, and understood that she had spent 9 years as the most reliable weapon a human being had ever deployed, and that the human had told her so. Don't stop. The tribunal chamber on Concord Station holds 400 delegates, and is designed so that no voice carries farther than its authority. Elune Vashet had no authority at all. She walked in anyway, at the 3rd hour, with a data spine in her fist and her daughter's hand in her other one, because she had not dared leave Sesh at home. She was 11 minutes ahead of the correction teams. What she said took 90 seconds. What she submitted took the tribunal system 4 hours to verify and could not be challenged, because it was the Ascendancy's own record, sealed by the Ascendancy's own archivist, under the Ascendancy's own unalterable law. The corrections were halted in 9 provinces. In 2, they were not. A foundry worker named Dove Corinth put himself in his own doorway in front of a small 4-eyed child named Second Thaw and did not move. And the enforcers, who were soldiers and not monsters and had not been told what they were correcting, stopped. In the 11th province, a house burned. The child lived. The Korahai woman who carried her out did not. 59 survivors then. The Empire had spent 9 years in a burning house to change 60 into 59, and it had not been enough. They brought Ren Holloway to the chamber on a medical frame because she could no longer stand for more than a few minutes. Somebody had washed her and put her in a clean gray shift, and she looked, in that vast, bright room, like something that had been left out in the weather for a decade. The Speaker of the Concord read the finding. The extinction determination was void, the claim was withdrawn, the homeworld was held in trust for 59 heirs. Sekal Vor stood through all of it without once looking away, which Elun thought, even then, was the only admirable thing he had ever done. And then the speaker turned to Ren and offered her the blood right. It is old law, and the Korai insisted on it because the Korai insist on pain. A wronged party may claim the life of the one who wronged them. It is clean, it is final, it closes the matter as a private debt. That last part was the trap, and Ren Holloway had known about it for 9 years. Because a matter closed as a private debt is a matter closed. Vengeance settled is a case ended. The Ascendancy's guilt would become one woman's satisfaction, and the 59 children would inherit a world through the generosity of an empire instead of through a judgment against it. And every future claim, every reparation, every protection written into the trust would rest on nothing but Korahai goodwill. Take the life, lose the world. They brought her the knife. The same one. Bor had kept it, and Elin understood at last that the warden had been offering her this exit for 9 years in that cold room, 1 pace away, hoping she would take it before she reached a room like this one. Ren looked at the blade on its cloth. Then she looked at Sekal Vor, and Elin, who had watched this woman's face for 9 years and thought she knew all of it, saw a thing pass across it that she had no word for. It was not forgiveness. It was heavier than that, and colder, and it did not let him go. I decline, Ren said. The chamber made a sound. 400 delegates, all at once, the sound a species makes when it realizes it has misfiled something enormous. Vor's crest went white. Why? He said. He was not shouting. He sounded like a man asking for directions in a city he had lived in all his life. 9 years, 9 years, and you will not even... He stopped, started again. Why do your people never take revenge? And Wren Holloway, 38 years old and gray and ruined, propped herself up on one elbow so the room could hear her. "We do," she said. "You're just used to the fast kind." She let that sit. "You asked me where I hid them. I put them in your houses. I put them in your law. I put them in your record, in your handwriting. And you kept it safe for me for 9 years because you're a careful people, and I was counting on that." Her breath caught. She waited it out. "You wanted me to kill you. That would have been the mercy. Instead, you get to be 70 years old on a world that knows exactly what you signed. And every year you'll watch them grow up, and they will not even hate you. They won't know you well enough to hate you." She lay back down. She was finished. "That's what we do instead of revenge," she said. "We let you live in the world you made." The trust was ratified 19 days later. The Civet homeworld reverted to a body of 59 heirs, none of whom were older than 17, all of whom had core high parents standing behind their chairs at the ceremony, looking uncomfortable in ceremonial dress and absolutely refusing to let go of their children's hands. Cinder War was not executed. The Concord had no appetite for it, and Wren had made a corpse legally useless. He was stripped, censured, and assigned to the Resettlement Oversight Office on the homeworld itself, where he spent the remaining 14 years of his life processing reconstruction permits in a building that looked out over the valley his order had emptied. He never spoke publicly again. When he died, a Civet clerk filed his death certificate and spelled his name correctly, and felt nothing much at all, which was somehow worse than anything a tribunal could have done. Ilune Vashkari lost her post, her pension, and her standing. She got a job cataloging shipping manifests in a harbor town, and she was happier than she had ever been in the Ascendancy's service. Sesh grew up and became a lawyer, which surprised nobody. Wren Holloway lived 19 months. Her body had been spent a long time before anyone let her out of it. She spent most of that time on the homeworld, in a low white house near the water. And she did not give interviews, and she did not write a memoir, and she turned down every honor the Concord tried to hang on her. But on clear evenings, children came. They came in ones and twos, teenagers now, four-eyed and soft-feathered and awkward, and they sat on her porch and asked her about a moon they could not remember. And she told them the truth, all of it, including the 4. The last one to come was 17, and had been called HFY by a farming family who never once made her change it. She sat down and said, "I don't remember you." "I know," Wren said. "You were facing outward. You were watching the sky." That's what I wanted. For 9 years, the Empire asked a human woman why her people never took revenge, and wrote her answer down every single day, and filed it, and never once thought to read it.